Welcome to LED Live. Today, we will be delving into the topic of social justice. And we're here to answer the question, in this day and age, is justice enough?
Find out on this episode of LED Live.
This is LED Live, the show where we use the light of Christ to expose the darkness found in media and our culture today. And today, I'd like to take the time to welcome a very special guest. This is my mom, Mama Calendar.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for joining the show and helping me out with this kind of topic.
Great being here.
This is where Kendi gets all of her wisdom from, right here.
Yes, this is so true. We have heard your requests and are working very hard to make them a reality. For all the Spanish speakers out there, Little Light Studios has a Spanish channel. It's called Little Light en Español. Anyone who speaks Spanish, you can go over there and watch Little Light Studios productions in your native tongue. And the goal is for all of our English content to be translated into Spanish and can be sent out to the Spanish-speaking community. So if you're a Spanish speaker or know someone who's Spanish, you can check out the link in the description box below to head right over to Little Light Studios en Español. And while you're down there, there are also links to our Patreon account and to our different t-shirts if you'd like to support us financially. And Michelle here has been working very hard on a new project. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So, as you guys see here, it's a sticker. This is another way to witness beside our t-shirt. Right now we have stickers, so you can get it. Is it in the description too?
Yep, we'll have that in the description box below.
Go to the description below and help support us.
Awesome.
So we hope we see these on lots of cars.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you may notice the energy is a little different on the show today. We're tackling a pretty heavy topic that I believe all of us should be involved in, and I'm thankful that you guys are here to discuss this with me and to get different viewpoints. And I encourage all of you to stay till the end to get a holistic view, to understand where we're coming from. So we encourage that. Prejudice and social justice are very volatile topics. Actually, those topics I wouldn't have touched before with a 10-foot pole. I was just like, no, I'll stay quiet. You know, it's
Because there's just no
scary.
good angle.
Right.
It's like wherever side you come at the topic, there's always going to be somebody that just doesn't like what you say about
Exactly.
it.
That's true.
But that was before, and I've done a lot of growing, and I've realized I am a Black woman living in America. I didn't have to realize. I could look at my skin every day and see that. But I'm also a Christian living today. And I do not have the option of staying quiet, you know, especially on this platform. Each one of us, every Christian, should be vocal about injustices in the world today. What do you guys think?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that something like this happens because there is a lot of injustice with a variety of things. But then, you know, it's like, yeah, we need to speak up. And the fact that we're still dealing with this in our society today in 2020,
Right.
it shouldn't be. We shouldn't be dealing with these topics.
Yeah, you know, Jesus said, how you treat the least of these, you treat like me, you know? So nobody should be treated least, you know, we're all one in Christ Jesus, he says. There's neither Jew nor Greek, you know, we're all the same. And I watched a documentary just 2 days ago of a guy who, he's been carrying a cross around for like a long time, traveling the world. And he started it like 50 years ago. And a cop came up to him because he was praying with a black man. He was holding his hands and praying with him. And a cop came up here and said, "What are you doing in Mississippi holding hands with a black man?" And he said,
Wow.
This is America. I'm free. I can pray with whoever I want to. And he got put in a car and taken down to the station.
Wow.
And I was just like, I can't even comprehend that.
Right.
Like, what?
Right.
So you don't have to be Black to realize that something isn't right. Something's going on. On May 25th, 2020, George Floyd, a 46-year-old Black man, died after a white police officer holding his knee on Floyd's neck pinned him to the pavement while Floyd was in handcuffs. In the days that followed, public outrage grew over what some protesters and lawmakers said is another case of police brutality against a Black man. Unrest has since erupted in Minneapolis and has spread across the nation and across the world. I'd like to show you a clip of what took place that day. Just a warning, the content that is about to be shown is explicit. Viewer discretion is advised.
What do you want? I can't breathe. Please, the knee in my neck. I can't breathe shit.
Bro, get up, get in the car, man.
I will.
Get up, get in the car.
I can't move.
I've been waiting the whole thing, man. Get up, get in the car.
Mama.
Get up and get in the car right.
I can't.
I gave y'all the opportunity to get in, bro. I told you can't win.
My knee.
You can't
my neck.
win, man.
I'm through.
I know you a nigga, you didn't listen.
I'm claustrophobic. My stomach hurts. My neck hurts. Everything hurts. Just water or something. Please. Please. I can't breathe, officer.
It's just immediately maddening.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, somebody pleading for their life, especially like a police officer, is supposed to serve and protect. That's their job, is like, you know, they're there to help preserve life and peace and safety for everyone. And then you see this situation where someone who is supposed to be the, you know, person that administers that, they are totally disregarding human life.
Yeah. So I watched a video that the Washington Post put out. It included the events that led up to the death of George Floyd and, you know, the people who were involved in it and all of that. And I could hardly make it through the video. I had to literally pray and ask God to quiet the rage that was building inside of me, because that could have been my cousin.
Yeah.
You know, that could have been my uncle. That could have been me. And the pain, just sitting with that thought, it's just, you can't even explain. I can't even explain what I'm feeling right now. In viewing another clip like this, it's exhausting. It really is exhausting. And when you look and you understand that we as a people are seen as the problem, that is the issue. And this is the reality that we live in today. And in response to this, the response to this is utter chaos. Check out this clip.
This is not a protest. This is not in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. This is chaos.
It's not right, man. It's not right. Y'all pull us over for broken taillights, shoot us, harass us. We got kids.
I'm hurt. I'm angry. But I ain't scared. I ain't scared at all.
That's right.
Well, Michael, I'm going to start off in the West Coast in Oakland, California. It was the first night of protests there, and initially they were peaceful, but then what happened, Michael, is thousands went into a highway. They completely blocked both lanes of traffic. That whole standoff lasted about 20 minutes. After that, we know that several businesses were set on fire. Now, these are larger businesses. We know that a bank was set on fire, also a Mercedes-Benz dealership, and a few other chains in those protests there in Oakland. Now let's move over to Los Angeles, where over there it was the third night of protests in the city. And again, initially they started off very peacefully, but then soon into the night, at around 8 o'clock in the evening, actually, protesters began hurling bottles and rocks at police. Then at around 9:30 at night, the LAPD declared for unlawful assembly for all of downtown Los Angeles and asked everyone to go home and asked businesses to close. However, that did take quite a while for people to kind of clear out the area. And then when they did, Michael, what was left behind was graffiti all over cars and businesses, and much of the graffiti said, "I can't breathe." And of course, we know that those are some of the last words that that came out of George Floyd's mouth before he died. Michael?
So those were the protests on the West Coast. What about the East and Midwest as well? Because certainly we saw the violence in many different cities.
That's just it. And I'm going to take you over to New York because that city there has seen protests for quite some time. This was, I think it was the second day of protests there. We know that there were injuries on both sides, on the sides of police and, of course, on the sides of protesters as well. We know thousands demonstrated outside the Barclays Center, and then things turned very violent. We know that police even responded with pepper spray on the protesters, and protesters there, Michael, responded by burning some police vehicles.
Yeah, it's like you just get to the breaking point, man. It's like, I remember hearing Tupac talk about it. He was saying, you know, how long can you just sit there and talk about it and nothing gets done? It just gets bottled up and it's going to explode. Like, that's where we're at. Like,
to me, it just seems like, you know, when the people that are supposed to be there, sort of like the authority in the room, right? And they're in the wrong. Where do you go from there? Like, who is supposed to be an authority over them? To me, it's like our government needs to take a look at this situation and at least have some sort of punishment for the people that are engaging in this, and being like, listen, if you are a police officer and you are caught doing this, I mean, it's just immediate, like, you know, life imprisonment or whatever. Like, it'd probably stop it real quick.
Exactly. Just that label of police officer. I don't know where that protection is coming from. Just because you're a police officer, you're not treated as a civilian who would just commit murder. I mean, you can literally be doing everything right and still run the risk of getting killed by a police officer.
Especially when you can tell it's not like it was manslaughter, not like an accident. He's sitting there like just kneeling on him the whole time. He's begging for his life.
The officer's knee was on George Floyd's neck for 8.5 minutes. And George Floyd is in cuffs, not resisting, asking for water, saying he can't breathe, saying he's in pain. It's manslaughter.
You know, it was interesting. I was listening on the radio, and they were talking about this whole experience. And did you notice the police officer had his hand in his pocket? And a martial artist called in to the radio station and said, "Do you know why his hand was in the pocket?" And the lady was like, "No, I wouldn't know." And she said, "Well, I was in martial arts, and you learn to use leverage of your body." And so he had leverage of his leg, and if you put your hand in your pocket, you're now using your whole upper body to push down even harder, and that's why his hand was in his pocket. He was administering as much force as he possibly could, which just makes you think, and there's, you know, other police officers standing around there. I mean, at what point do you as a police officer shove the guy off and be like, I don't care if I'm going to get, you know, fired, reprimanded, whatever, like someone's about to die here. I mean, just the fact that they're all just standing around nonchalantly is
That's a good point.
It's disturbing.
Yeah, I mean,
But you know, years ago, I adopted a saying from someone, one of my mentors: how you do one thing is how you do everything. And when we look around at how most, not all, but most policemen behave in society in general, they go through the red lights. They go through the stop signs. It's as though the law is not for them. So they break all the laws, but they hold the civilians to the law. So this is just another expression of that mindset.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because in their minds, they can do no wrong. So they're not going to disrespect one law and respect another. They're just all laws. And so they're just above all of the laws. That's how the bad ones behave. And this is an illustration of that point, in my mind.
And the thing is, not all police officers are like that, but it's the bad ones that you see in the news. It's the bad ones getting all the publicity. And it's the same with this when it comes to, you know, like black on black crime, which even like, I don't even like that phrase. It doesn't make any sense because when white people go at it, they don't call it white on white crime.
Right.
But it's like, you know, what's portrayed, what's being pushed out then becomes a label for the entire community. And it's on both sides with police officers as well as the black community. I want nothing more than for this police officer to be tried and given the same punishment as any other murderer. What's frightening is the response of the protesters. I don't understand what they're trying to achieve by destroying their own neighborhoods, their own communities. The same people that they would like to protect, that they want justice for, are the same people that they're hurting. Because the communities need those education buildings. You know, they need those stores. They
even
need
even
the police.
prisons and stuff.
The
Are
prisons,
these riots happening in predominantly black communities?
yeah, Atlanta.
Oh, so
50% of the
they're
businesses in
not
Atlanta
going
are
to
black owned.
the, like, you know, upper echelon white population.
That's a good question. I'm not 100%
Are they
sure.
rioting there? Because it's like, yeah, you're hurting your own, you know, people.
Yeah.
And what is that going to accomplish? You know.
Exactly. So the thing is, you know, taxpayer dollars are going up in flames, and it's going to be taxpayer dollars that go to rebuild these things. So I don't really see the point. How quickly we forget our history and what we were able to accomplish effectively with peace. And I don't believe this is the right response at all. Listen carefully to what the mayor of Atlanta had to say about her city.
And for some perspective, let's go to the mayor of Atlanta, who in no way wanted to see her city on fire and was very outspoken about it, and also had perspective on why what she doesn't like happening was happening. And it's very important to hear. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. Listen to her.
I am a mother. I am a mother to 4 black children in America, one of whom is 18 years old. And when I saw the murder of George Floyd, I hurt like a mother would hurt. And on yesterday, when I heard there were rumors about violent protests in Atlanta, I did what a mother would do. I called my son and I said, "Where are you?" I said, "I cannot protect you, and black boys shouldn't be out today. So you're not going to out-concern me and out-care about where we are in America. I wear this each and every day, and I pray over my children each and every day. So what I see happening on the streets of Atlanta is not Atlanta. This is not a protest. This is not in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. This is chaos. A protest has purpose. When Dr. King was assassinated, we didn't do this to our city. So if you love this city that has had a legacy of black mayors and black police chiefs and people who care about this city, where more than 50% of the business owners in Metro Atlanta are minority business owners. If you care about this city, then go home and pray that somebody like Reverend Beasley will come and talk to you and give you some instructions on what a protest should look like and how you effectuate change in America. This police chief made a video on yesterday, pull it up on YouTube, where she said she was appalled to watch the murder of George Floyd. This woman did that. You're not honoring the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement. You're not protesting anything, running out with brown liquor in your hands, breaking windows in this city. T.I. and Killer Mike own half the West Side. So when you burn down this city, you're burning down our community. If you want change in America, go and register to vote. Show up at the polls on June 9th. Do it in November. That is the change we need in this country. You are disgracing our city. You are disgracing the life of George Floyd and every other person who has been killed in this country. We are better than this. We're better than this as a city. We are better than this as a country. Go home. Go home. In the same way I couldn't protect my son on yesterday, I cannot protect you out in those streets. You're throwing knives at our police officers. You are burning cars. You have to face the CNN building. Ted Turner started CNN in Atlanta 40 years ago because he believed in who we are as a city. There was a black reporter who was arrested on camera this morning who works for CNN. They are telling our stories, and you are disgracing their building. This is not the legacy of civil rights in America. This is chaos, and we're buying into it. This won't change anything. We're no longer talking about the murder of an innocent man. We're talking about how you're burning police cars on the streets of Atlanta, Georgia. Go home.
Wow.
She brought up so many points.
Yeah, so many points. First off, just I appreciate what she's saying, that this is not the way to deal with it. Like if somebody comes at you and they're smiling and you're coming back at them angry, it's all of a sudden going to make the other person angry, right? No. You kind of just rise to that same emotional level. I teach my kids this concept all the time. You come screaming and yelling, your brother or sister is going to come screaming and yelling right back, and then before you know it, you're trying to one-up each other and see who's going to dominate in this situation. That doesn't solve anything. But if somebody comes at you screaming and yelling and they're angry at you and you come back at them with a smile, what's that going to do?
Diffuses the whole situation.
Yeah, so
that's actually a biblical principle. Solomon, the wisest man, says, "A soft answer turneth away wrath."
That's right. That's right.
I understand that people are in pain and they're looking for a release, but here's my fear. I'm fearing that we're proving the racist's point. We're proving, this false idea that black people aren't thinkers, that black people are uncontrollable, that black people are dangerous people. When you see those clips, and that's what's in the media. You're not seeing the clips of people actually trying to protect police officers. You're not seeing the clips of people trying to reason with each other. No, you're seeing the chaos. You're seeing the anger. You're seeing the destruction.
But what's even more alarming to me is you see these riots and you see people. Everybody has a camera. I mean, that's what's amazing about today's day and age, right? You can barely get away with anything because everybody's rolling around with cameras, right? And you've got these guys that are rolling up on these protests and breaking windows and smashing stuff, and then people run over to them like, "Hey, what are you doing?" They flip around. They're these white kids. Like, what are you doing? Inciting even? It's like they're desiring for this thing to get out of control.
I want you to know this is not. Don't police people's way of
Let me tell you
themselves.
This is not a black woman who's putting Black Lives Matter. I just want you to know that right, but y'all doing that for us, and we ain't asked you to do that. Listen, don't spray stuff on here when they gonna blame black people for this, and black people didn't do it. They not gonna show y'all faces when they see that on their building. They gonna blame that on us. Y'all are part of the problem.
This is in reaction to what happened. My question is, why didn't something happen in the midst of the situation? When you have a police officer with his knee on top of a civilian for 8.5 minutes, no one thought, let me run over and push this guy so this guy can breathe. Let me go and do something. What's the worst that'll happen? I'll get arrested, sure, but at least the guy lives. That was what was going through my mind while I was watching this video. Why wasn't something done in that instant? Why is everyone so quick to jump and set things ablaze? Where were those people when George Floyd was on the ground?
I think legally in our country, you can be a citizen and actually arrest a cop. I think that's your legal right if they're disregarding the law.
Well, we are the government. The government, we pay the
people.
government.
The people should be.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
No, but I mean, you can make a citizen's arrest. You can do it.
We live in America, right? We live in America. What do they say? It's the land of the free, home of the brave. But let's be real. In this country, it's white people who are free, and the people of color need to be brave. And the same things that you're talking about, we should be able to this. We can do that. Unfortunately, it depends on the person. Because as I attempt to make this arrest because I have the right, they'll be so quick to come and arrest me for trying to enforce the right that I have. These are the things we have to think about, that we can't be so quick to say, hey, on paper, I'm allowed to do this. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. That's what we're trying to change.
And many times you're actually not really also allowed to voice the injustices that you suffer. That's why I have never been chosen to sit on a juror's course, because whenever they interview me, and they always ask you, well, what do you do? I'm a speech therapist, speech pathologist. Where do you work? In a school. Or you have a job. Aren't you fortunate that you have a job? Think about how many people don't have a job. And my response usually is, well, I have a job and I'm grateful for it. But you see, that can only happen in this land of justice. And I usually respond, well, it's justice for some. And again, the policeman says to me, what do you mean justice for some? I said, well, justice is different in this country. Some people actually do get justice, and others of us get just this.
Oh, wow.
And the guys,
they're like, you out now.
and you know, they go and they have the little chatting outside, and next thing I know, someone comes, can you come with me, please, and take your things? And they take me to the desk, and the woman says, thank you so much for coming. We'll see you again in 4 years.
Wow.
I have never been chosen, because every time they bring up something like that, I make sure to let them know that I don't think the system of justice is truly working the same for everyone.
Yeah, this is apparently totally true.
There are a few things that I'd like to address from what the mayor of Atlanta said. 3 things in particular. One thing, did you catch it? That she said,
a protest has purpose.
That was powerful when she said that. A protest has purpose. There is a difference between activism and advocacy. Okay, so let's delve into that. When you think of an activist, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
You think of like, protest, like if
Protest.
there was signs and whatnot.
Right. When I think of activism, this is what I see.
Right.
People screaming, you know, they're there. There's a good cause behind it. But what's
they're
the
blocking
approach?
the streets, they're blocking the normal way of life because they're just wanting people to say, hey, pay attention to this topic.
When you think of an advocate, what comes to mind?
You're like a lawyer.
A lawyer,
a mediator.
Mediator. These are good words. This is what I think of. This is what comes to mind.
Right.
You know, talking it out, presenting a case.
I like what that mayor said. Look, I'm here fighting for you. This city has employed the Black community in influential positions, but we can't do that if you're out there throwing knives at a police officer.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. The simplest way I can explain the difference between activism and advocacy is activism is militant. Advocacy is a defense. And that's what we need as a Black community. We need advocates. And you don't have to be Black to be advocate of the Black community.
Like, surely this is a time for me to listen, not talk. And then I realized that that's part of the problem. People like me have to speak up. To be clear, I'm not talking about late night hosts or people who are fortunate like I am to have a platform. I'm talking about white people. White people cannot just say anymore, yeah, I'm not racist, and think that that's enough, because it's not. It's not enough, because make no mistake, this is our problem to solve. How can the Black community dismantle a problem that they didn't create? We shouldn't just be trying to understand the rage. We should feel the rage. Now, no one wants to see destruction in their cities. It's frightening and it is hard to watch. But don't let that distract you from the message of the protesters who have voices that need to be heard right now. Because the things white people associate with justice, help, and safety are often the very opposite for Black and brown people. While white people can generally trust the police to protect and serve them, for Black communities, the police force can represent a painful past of enforcing overtly racist laws, such as segregation, and a presence of racial inequality, racial profiling, over-policing of communities of colour, and most glaringly, the use of force on Black citizens, something which is too frequent, often deadly, and historically without consequence. As a white man, I am afforded all kinds of privileges as the result of a system that has been built on injustice. I know that I can never truly understand the pain and the fear that so many Black Americans are forced to endure to simply live. But I do know that it's imperative that those of us with privilege stand alongside the oppressed, to hear, to listen, to take time, to be educated, and to use our platforms to amplify their voices. But as I said at the start, I feel hopeless. I don't have the answers. I have nothing to offer. But I know that I want to do more. I want to learn more. And let that be a start.
We need more advocacy, more conversations with the right people, the people who actually have the power to create change. Advocates present a case, and I believe that presenting this case creates a lasting change, whereas activists force the hand. And I believe that that leads to resentment and that leads to more hatred. We need advocates. Second thing I want to bring up is she brought up Martin Luther King, and I want to expand out the history to even previous to Martin Luther King, all the way up to the post-sin world. So after sin entered into the world, after Adam and Eve, going forward. In reality, unfortunately, this is nothing new. What we're experiencing here today is nothing new. And if you study history, every single era had its injustices. Yeah? Am I correct here in saying
Jews
this?
didn't like the Samaritans, you know?
Yeah. Let's go all the way back to the days of Noah.
So Genesis 6, verse 5, 12, and 13 say, "And God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. And God said to Noah, The end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth."
Does that sound familiar? Is that not what we're living through right now? Their thoughts were evil continually, and the earth was filled with violence. So we talked about Noah. Let's fast forward to the prophecies of what was going to be happening in Jerusalem and that what was actually fulfilled in Jerusalem. Isaiah chapter 59, verses 14 through 17. Mikey, can you read that for us?
And judgment is turned away backward, and justice stands afar off, for truth is fallen in the street, and equity cannot enter. Yea, truth falls, and he that departs from evil makes himself a prey, and the Lord saw it, and it displeased him that there was no judgment.
Right there. The Lord is paying attention. Isn't that comforting in a way?
It is. And that he's moved because he sees like there's no justice like here. Can I read something to you? Psalms 11:5. The Lord tests the righteous, but his soul hates the wicked and the one who loves violence. Like that's just an interesting thought to me that God hates something. That to me is foreign because we so often talk about God is love. God is love. He's always loving, right? But it's like there's something that he absolutely just cannot stand because violence just takes. It's like if you're gonna kill somebody, from that point forward, that soul's fate is decided. Like they can no longer choose or be one or whatever. It's like that's the end. And isn't that interesting that man was made in an upright, moral. They were able to make judgment. What we lost in the Garden of Eden was our judgment. And it seems like the more that we give up our sound reason or judgment, that's the closer to Satan's whole thing is. He's just lost his judgment.
Yeah, two things.
And it's like our God sense.
Our God sense?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, you got to explain that. God sense.
Break that one down.
Well, physically, we have these five senses that we see the world, we learn about the world through our senses, which is called the avenue to our souls. But the God sense that we have is that wisdom that comes from God, the type of judgment that comes through our conscience, because God speaks to us through our conscience. And when that is lost, then anything goes.
Wow.
That's almost like why isn't there a verse that talks about their consciences were seared?
As with a hot iron.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it might be kind of a different topic, but the unpardonable sin, you know, rejecting that conscience over and over and over until in Genesis it says, my spirit will not always strive with man. There comes a point where God realizes that you're not going to change, and so, you know, his spirit leaves, and that person has no conscience. The scientific community would call it a sociopath, you know, but we know spiritually they've just blasphemed the Holy Spirit to the point of, or grieving the Holy Spirit to the point of him leaving.
I take this to a different level and look at it from another perspective. I don't think the Holy Spirit ever leaves or withdraws in the sense that we think about it. I think that when someone continually rejects the voice of God, after a while, that voice keeps getting softer and softer and softer because it becomes easier and easier to keep doing the wrong thing. And after a while, you just don't hear that voice anymore because it's called the soft voice. You just don't hear it anymore because you've crowded it out so often. When it comes at one point, you hear silence.
Yeah, seared like a hot iron, like calloused. Eventually, those guitar strings don't hurt your fingers anymore because they're calloused
Can't
up.
penetrate.
Wow.
So what's great about this verse is that we see the Lord fights back. You want to continue, Mikey?
Yeah. And he saw that there was no man and wondered that there was no intercessor. Therefore, his arm brought salvation to him, and his righteousness, it sustained him. For he put on righteousness as a breastplate and a helmet of salvation upon his head, and he put the garments of vengeance for clothing, and was clad with zeal as a cloak.
Can you picture that? Him suiting up, like just ready for battle?
Yeah, you know, that final picture of Jesus when he takes off his priestly robes and puts on his kingly robes. And he's coming back. He's going to give everyone according to their deeds. And, you know, unfortunately, some people don't like the judgment aspect of God. But
it's so necessary.
It's merciful to the people that have been wronged for so long. It's just like, there's got to be justice. You know what I mean?
So the only difference between back then and throughout history and now is what? Think about it. What's the difference? Because we've seen this.
The media?
There you go, technology.
We can highlight, and then if you see that over, I often wonder, I have this kind of conversation over and over again, are we seeing more racial tension, or has it always been there and we're just able to like fly that around immediately?
I think the second part of what you said.
Yeah.
I think it's always been there,
and we're just
but now
highlighting
because we have this global community and everyone has a camera and a phone and there is the internet, then you see it in real time.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
So the third point I want to bring up, she pled for people, especially black boys, to go home. The question that came to my mind was, for those who listened and went home, what now? You know, you're home, you're sitting with this. What do you do?
Now they feel like they're not helping at all, you know, just sitting there not speaking up. So, yeah.
So you know, and maybe forgive my ignorance on this, but there's really no good way to cut it for the black males anyway. If you don't do anything, then your own kind will say you didn't, you know, enter into this and stand up and fight. If you do something, is that really necessarily the best? It's like they're kind of caught in, I understand them. What do? You know what I mean? Like you feel like something needs to get done. I mean, what a frustrating situation.
Well, maybe since you're gathering somewhere anyway, I mean, they advertised on social media or whatever, we're going down here looting. I mean, if you're gathered like that, get out a bullhorn and, you know, talk about what you want to talk about, but don't destroy stores and stuff.
So here's an idea. The media is very effective in stirring the pot, right?
Yeah.
What if we use the media to talk about these issues? What if we use a bullhorn to bring people together? You know what I mean? Like, don't fight this with sticks and stones, but fight this with words and, you know, just information.
Yeah, I saw this post on Facebook about this protest in Miami, and the police actually just kneel down and just look down And the protest ended up being a peaceful one. You know, they talk, and I saw a picture of a police hugging the civilians. And then I saw a comment on that, and it said, you know, I watched CNN the whole day and I did not see this on TV. What if we just put up those nice picture, you know, actually the peaceful one that get to a resolution that will inspire another protester to do the same.
And highlight those as the news outlet stories. You know what I mean? Instead of the thing that's going to douse gasoline onto the fire, something that's going to put water onto a fire and calm it down, for sure.
But what I've realized in terms of what becomes news in the media, sensationalism is what sells.
Yeah. Right.
That's what gives you greater or higher ratings. So for the images that you're talking about, for them to get to people, civilians would have to post those. Those would have to become YouTube videos or private internet videos. I don't think we would see much of it at all in the news, except it's something happening to somebody. The mayor, she referred to the CNN news reporter that was arrested. And I actually saw that video. It was a young black gentleman, and he was reporting on what was happening. The police were coming in, they had on their riot gear, and they were telling the people to move back and where to stand. And the guy was standing where they had said they could stand, and he was just reporting on what was happening, and the police were coming, and it seems like things were quieting down. And then they approached him. And while they're approaching him, he is saying that the police are approaching him. And they come to him, and he says to them, well, what do you want us to do? Just tell us where you want us to go, and we'll move there. Just, tell us what we want. We got you, buddy. And the next thing you know, they were arresting him. And we didn't know why he was being arrested. So they hand the mic over to his producer. Then they arrested the producer. And then they arrested the camera crew. And they took them all down. And all of that was covered on the camera. At one point, the person in the studio was saying, our cameras are on the ground. We don't know what's going on.
Wow.
And so, I think I saw later that he was released. But I'm not sure if they ever gave a reason for arresting. All he was doing was covering what was happening. And he identified himself, who he was of CNN.
I would like to see our government do something. This has been a problem long enough with it. There needs to be somebody that's stepping in and either educating from the top down and getting involved, and there needs to be consequences. I mean, this is doing nobody any good but causing all of us taxpayers billions of dollars in just destroyed stuff and a bunch of hatred feelings. And it's like, I mean, that would mean that the government would have to want to stop it. I don't know, if we would even go there with that can of worms.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up. I'm glad that you brought it up too, because I don't want to lighten this situation at all, but I do believe that we often talk about how Satan is behind the media and stuff, and he's the destroyer. He's the antagonizer, and when you see like footage of some random white guy going by and casually just busting windows and stuff, it makes you wonder, like, is somebody else enticing this for a purpose to cause chaos and cause division so that they can, inflict stronger laws and things like that, or
And if there really is a mindset of people, like, let's say it's not the government, playing both sides or whatever like this, it's just random people, then that's even more disturbing to me, that we have a bunch of people running around that see an opportunity to just create violence when it has nothing to do with them. That is a problem to me, and it's probably because everyone's playing GT5.
Yeah, right.
Oh my goodness. Well,
but what you're talking about, it's not going to come from a human perspective, because the Bible tells us the heart of man is deceitful, deceitfully wicked. And so it has to come from outside of man. And that brings to mind something I heard Pastor Ivor Myers say this weekend when he was preaching. He talked about the first racist being Satan. He went right back to, he says, well, how does God describe himself? God describes himself like the bow in the sky. The rainbow has many colors. God made man in his own image, which means that every color of every race is a representation of God.
Wow.
In God's image. And Satan hates God, which means Satan hates the human race that God created. So there are no races. There's only one race, and that's the human race from God's perspective. So when Satan pits people against each other, but in actual fact, he hates us all. Every race he hates. And so he puts one against the other, thinking, I'm winning, my race is winning, but you're actually losing. Because the one who is doing the evil is sinning. The one to whom the evil is being done is angry and sinning. So they're both sinning, and Satan wins in the end.
That's right. Wow.
You know, it's like we can explain this from the Christian perspective to the Christian. What do you say to the non-Christian?
Right. So I actually broke up the answer. What do you do when you arrive home? I broke up my answer into two. One for the non-believer and one for the Christian specifically. And to the non-believer, I would encourage that person carefully watch the events that are taking place. Ask yourself, are things going back to normal? Or are they getting worse? Are they getting more intense? Is it just affecting my city? Or is it affecting the entire globe? With a combination of the coronavirus, right? With the loss of jobs, the economy, the continuation of racism and other social justice issues, the nation marching in the streets, the world, I should say, marching in the streets, because we're hearing what's happening in Italy. We're hearing what's happening in London in response to what happened in Minneapolis.
And this is not even your country.
Exactly.
You're rioting. I'm questioning where the world is at right now.
The world is in turmoil. So you have to ask yourself, where is this leading? Where is this heading? And I'd leave it at that. If a Christian is talking to a non-Christian, I'd leave it at that. Drop that seed and have the Holy Spirit work with that. Because then they may start asking questions. Okay, where is this heading?
Yeah.
What should I be reading? What book should I be reading? You know, who should I be praying to? Where are the answers?
Where can I find answers?
Where can I find the answers? And to understand these things that we're talking about, you know, it's the devil behind this and all this type of stuff. To say that to someone who's in pain, to tell them to go home, like that's a lot.
Yeah.
So just to ask thinking, thought-provoking questions and have the Holy Spirit lead in that instance. And then my answer to the Christian, not just Black Christians, all Christians. Here's my response. Here's my answer. We are charged by Jesus Christ to talk, but not only talk, we are charged to live the solution. We are not to dwell on the problem or even be a part of the problem. The world is already doing that. They're doing quite an effective job because these riots will lead to change. There will be a push for justice in the sense that not only was the officer fired, now he's been arrested and now charges have been made. So acts of justice are happening as a result of these riots, but will justice take away the pain and the resentment of the Black community, right? Will justice change the mindset and the attitude of the racist? Is justice enough? What about the heart? I don't believe justice is enough at all. I believe that if we're wanting to change the heart and the mind of the human race, the only way that can happen is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
That's right.
Remember at the end of that clip where I was showing you all the acts of the protesters, and there was a Black man in a black shirt, and he says, I'm not even afraid, I'm angry.
I'm angry, but I ain't scared. I ain't scared at all.
That's right. You know, the Bible doesn't discount our human emotions. The Bible says, be angry, feel it,
Sin not.
but sin not. And what you said is, you know, because what do you tell the person who's afraid, the Black person who's walking down the street, fearful because of what's going on, Black person who's angry, what do you tell them? When you have that relationship with Jesus Christ, you've already determined in your mind that I am going to live as he asks me, and I believe that he will be there through it all. And you have love in your heart. I'm going to read it because it was so good. She said, perfect love casts out fear. When you have perfect love for Christ and you believe his promises, that love will take away the fear. To be walking through as a person of color and not be fearful. Being angry, but not sinning. Still presenting the love of Christ despite what I'm feeling on the inside. Oh, what a testimony.
And I would say, if you just spend a thoughtful hour just thinking about the closing moments of the cross, right? Here we have Jesus sprawled out in one of the most crazy torture. Okay, putting your knee on someone's neck, yes, that hurts. Driving spikes into your hand and displaying you up in front of everyone to walk by, stark naked, that's crazy, right? And Jesus is sitting there going, Father, forgive them.
Wow.
They know not what they're doing. Listen to this verse, Matthew 6:15. But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father in heaven forgive you yours.
Wow.
We've all trespassed God.
That's right.
Every single one of us. And by trespassing God, we've all trespassed each other. We've all lied to each other. We've done horrible and evil things to each other. So if we can't forgive those kind of things, how is it, speaking to the Christian, how is it that we can go to God and say, forgive me of all the stuff I've done, yet I'm totally unwilling to forgive this person over here?
There we go. It's not just in our homes, it's wherever we go. It's something you need to practice. This isn't easy. You know, we know we're not asking for any, God even knows he's not asking for anything easy, which is why it was necessary for Jesus to go through something like that as our example. And it's why he didn't just come down to earth and the next day he was crucified. No, this was a 33-year experience of him being put down, of him having to practice what he preached.
I had a experience, like a first time happened to my family. So in where I live in the community, sometimes it happens that, you know, we have a dog and the Muslim, they don't like dogs, right? I'm not trying to make the Muslim bad, but this is just a story. So there was one event, the dog was barking in my house because guests coming, and the person behind my house, he did not like that. So he came to my house, actually came to the door, and he tried to hit my dad because he was the one that opened the door.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I mean, our family is a Chinese descent too, and we're Christians. So he came to the door, but my dad was calm. He was like, okay, you know, let's just talk this out. But this guy kept, you know, trying to hit him and everything. And I saw it, I got mad. And then so my mom finally came, and, you know, she got kind of angry too, but both of them were calm. Like, I was actually the one that is like, you know, like, this is not okay, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, you know, he actually left. But when I was talking to my parents, like, you know, this is not okay. We need to report the police, everything. And then my mom and dad asked me, and then what? Yeah. After you report the police, and then what? Like, well, I don't know. But he needs to be charged. Like, well, if you report the police, it's gonna cost more on us because we need to pay the lawyer, we need to pay this and that then. And then what? Why don't we pray for him?
Wow. How many characters in the Bible could have the same story of a complete injustice? John the Baptist. Look, man, I was telling the king to be moral and not, you know, taking his brother's wife or whatever, and I get thrown in jail, and Jesus is out there, he could save me, and he doesn't. He could have every right to stand up and be like, dude, this is totally injustice right here. But he stuck to, you know, that faith, and Jesus didn't even go and visit him. Like, that to me is amazing. Like, just see how these different characters in the Bible, this injustice is going to come in many different forms all the time. It's really, how do we react to it?
There you go.
That's the key.
And we actually don't want to react to it. We want to respond.
That's right.
And you can only respond if you've thought about it before. Because we know the Bible says anyone that chooses to live justly will get persecution. So we know that injustice will come once we choose to be living according to the will and the law of God. And so we have to think about these things beforehand. And make the decision, resolve to always stand for what is right. But you know, we spoke about people who had injustice done to them. You talked about Jesus, you talked about John. when we look back at it, how did they become who they became as adults?
As their upbringing.
You have to look at parenting. And so as I was thinking about this, I actually thought about 3 critical factors that Christian parenting should always keep in mind. And the first is that every Christian parent should introduce their children to Jesus Christ.
Amen.
And they should lead their child. It's the parent who should lead the child to accept Jesus into their hearts and surrender their life to him. The pastor or the minister in the church comes after. I think children should accept Christ first from their home, from the parent leading them to Christ. And the second point is that each parent or every parent should help their children to develop a worldview that's eternal in perspective.
That's right.
A worldview that looks at what's going to happen to me in eternity. When this world ends, where will I end? And the third thing I thought about was you should teach your children to think for themselves. They should not be reflectors of other men's thoughts. They should not be followers, they should be leaders.
Amen.
Because that's what God wants his followers to be the leaders. A fisher of man leads someone, a disciple leads someone to the master. And I think if those 3 factors, those 3 principles were exercised by parents at home, in every Christian home, we won't have a lot of the things that you see. And there are lots of Christians in these riots. There are lots of people who are talking about the God and talking about Christ. Some will go to the point of saying, I'll lay my Christianity down, and when I'm finished with this, I'll pick it up. That's not what Christianity is all about. And we need to teach our children to think with an eternal perspective, from the spiritual perspective, and not with a temporal or physical perspective.
Look at the eternal perspective somebody like Joseph had. You know? I mean, you've got to really be strong in your faith to be sold into slavery from your brothers, lied to by the person that you're only helping and increasing their house, thrown in prison, forgotten about, and you're still completely faithful to God. If anyone has anything to say about injustice, I'm sorry, that's a pin right there. And so you can go through the whole Bible. Job.
He was a child.
Yeah.
When he was sold, he was a child.
Yeah.
When the Hebrew boys and Daniel were taken into captivity, they were children. They were young men. And so it is important that we prepare our children for the life that is going to come to them later, because it will come.
That's right. I like how this conversation really went back to a call for the parents. This education begins in the home, teaching the children how to react to something like this, because brothers and sisters, this is not going to go away. This is going to get worse and worse and worse. And it's like no amount of fighting is going to equal the injustice that's coming. It's been injustice since the beginning.
Yes.
So one way that I just love that came out of this conversation is really educate yourselves in Christ from an early age on up, and get to know the God of the Bible. It just puts things into perspective.
That's what God intended for parents to do. Because when we go back to Deuteronomy chapter 6, that's what he says, that parents should teach the commandments and teach the precepts of God to their children. It says, when you wake up, when you sit by the table, when you walk by the road, when you're going to sleep, write it on your doorpost. That actually,
when you look, your t-shirt.
Nice. Yeah, when you look at all of the places, the examples that are given where parents should be talking to their children about God, it really covers the entire span of living through one day. So your parents are supposed to introduce their children to God, teach them all of the precepts of God. and make sure that they understand. Have opportunity for them to ask questions, answer the questions. And when you do that, then you have children who understand why they are Christians. They're not just going to church because the parents said, you have to come to church with me today. They're actually going because they know the God that we worship when we go to church, and they want to go because they love Jesus. And I think that that is the foundation for change in humans in the world that we live in. Because grown-ups will want children. To grow up to be a callous and hard and evil person, it started, the seeds were sown somewhere in the childhood.
And how much of that racism is really passed down from the parents?
A lot.
A lot.
You just have to watch children play and look at when they stop playing with other races.
We're here in the South, and I know that these are deep family things that are passed on to generations of kids. These poor kids, they probably have never had an experience that would make them hateful, but it's been programmed into them since their childhood.
It's important to allow kids to experience truth. You know, so they have a balanced worldview. Don't just, sit on the couch with them and watch the news, watch the discrimination, all these things. No, how about you take them on a play date with a Black family? Have them experience the average Black family that is just really similar and normal to everyone else.
That's right.
Who's happy, who's trying to build up a life just like everyone else. Have that balance as well.
Put on your glasses that this is humanity. You know what I mean?
I'd like to send my deepest condolences to the family of George Floyd and to families who have lost loved ones previous to him because of just the violence and the volatile situation that's going on in this country. Here at Little Light Studios, we're building a community at LED Live, one of love and one where we would like to be the change that we wish to see. So please, if you have a story, if you have a word of encouragement, if you have a prayer that you'd like to share, leave that in the comment section below so others can benefit as well. If there's anything that was said on the show that you disagree with and you'd like to share your opinion, leave that as well. But please be respectful to everyone who comes into the comment section. And may God bless each and every one of you, and specifically protect you until we see you again. Have a great week, guys. Bye-bye.